This is He Who Moans, Doctor Who reviews. I only complain because I like Doctor Who and I care. And I overanalyze too much because, whatever, it's just my opinion. Okay, so it's finally time for the editorial that I was going to do at the end of Series 8 to round off my thoughts on the show in its current state. It took me so long because it's a difficult discussion to have, but I'm going to try and be as sensitive as possible, and I'm going to begin by politely requesting that you play nice in the comments, guys. Always remember, it's all art, it's all opinion, though yes, the following editorial is heavily one-sided because it happens to be mine. Yes, my opinions are one-sided. They are one-sided because I occupy one side, because I am one person who holds an opinion. Am I supposed to subdivide so I can occupy all sides and hold all opinions at once? Sure, it'd make me a more likeable YouTube entity, as I'll always please everyone in that instance, but cloning's fucking expensive, so it's probably not going to happen. Sorry. But if you disagree with all of what I'm about to say, cool, go for it. I mean that. Don't bear you any ill will. Try and change my mind if you want to. Now, as much as I love Doctor Who, I've tried to make it clear ever since the beginning that I'm not here to wrap the show in cotton wool and stick a lollipop in its mouth just because I'm a fan. I primarily won't shut up if I see some flaws in what they're doing, because if you only allow backslapping and no highlighting areas for the show to build on, you will never see any kind of artistic progression, and your favourite show will remain stuck in the past as a result, and that is what kills TV shows. I just don't think we should treat it as if it will get smashed to death if we let anyone say anything even the tiniest bit negative about it. No, I'm under no impression that what I have to say will make a difference in the long run, but believe it or not, I do want the show to do well. That's why I always say at the beginning of my videos, I only complain because I care. Whether you think there's nothing wrong with the way the show's going, there's always a purpose in critical thinking, and again, this is just how I see things as they currently stand. Now, I say all of this as a former Moffat fanboy, and I know that I usually get painted as a member of the Moffat licks balls crowd these days, but I do believe he is a good writer, being weighed down by current circumstances. Look at stuff like Blink, Empty Child, Curse of the Fatal Death. He is incredibly talented. No, really, he really is. But the problem that lots of us have been having with Moffat lately is that he's got far too much creative control over the production, and he's hit burnout. He hit burnout a long time ago and has been coasting on a recobbling together of the same 4 or 5 ideas that he brought to the table 4 years ago just to get by. Which is a lot more dangerous a way for the show to continue than you'd like to think, as more people will come to think this way sooner or later if it just keeps doing the same things. Death in Heaven did that for lots of people, believe me. Mainly it's because good writing requires a clear head and time to think, and he has to write 6 episodes a year and hasn't had nearly enough time to grow as a writer because heading up the production side and the creative side has just left him overburdened with too much stuff to do. See, I am trying to understand Moffat's position here before you start decrying this video. He has to deal with a lot more than he ever had the experience of before, and Doctor Who in particular is a really complicated show to write because it runs through a lot of new ideas and new situations episode to episode, because it has a magic blue box that can literally go anywhere and do anything, and it is hard to come up with new things that you can do on a regular basis on the BBC's budget that stays true to its anywhere, anywhen premise, but ultimately, people who think I'm really unfair on Moffat these days, am I wrong to think that quality has been sacrificed for quantity? Like, does anyone out there honestly, genuinely think that Death in Heaven holds a candle to The Empty Child? The reason that I get so frustrated with Moffat by this point is I know how good he can be, and it just feels like he's run out of steam. I also do not believe that he has had nearly enough constructive feedback for his recent work, and it was always assumed that he knew what he was doing, when, in spite of the mythical fairy tale of the auteur who doesn't need constructive feedback that nerd culture always tells itself, creatives need other people to offer impartial feedback and say, that idea's good, that one needs work, in order to push their imagination further and present challenges to them to grow as a writer. Doesn't matter who they are, a writer is only as good as the feedback that they build on. And I just can't help getting the impression that Moffat's just been left free rein to do whatever unfiltered ideas come off the top of his head because he's the boss and because of the hero worship that he garnered from his early works. Like, when he presented the stupid, awful nudity gags from Time of the Doctor, did everyone in the production on Doctor Who at that moment in time think that they were 1, funny, and 2, actually necessary to the overall plot? He's also been wimping out on taking any daring artistic decisions out of an abject fear that they won't pay off and remaining firmly stuck in his comfort zone for far too long. I mean, yeah, he has taken some risks, but when you look at his storytelling technique, he's pretty much been doing the same things every year since he started. And I think I know why he's been doing that. Since day one, Moffat's entire career as showrunner has been based more on future-proofing than anything else, and unfortunately, it's left him artistically impotent. The future-proofing and nothing else attitude saw things like every series asking more questions than it answers, eternally pissing us off by just throwing more shit at it every time we want something rewarding with any degree of finality to it. He's always writing the lead up to his next story instead of his current one. And with the whole talk of Series 9 ending on this massive cliffhanger, I just have a feeling he's about to do that again. The main reason, as far as I can see, that he was focused so much on future-proofing was to shut people complaining about plot holes up because maybe we'll wrap things up properly in the future. You don't know nothing. I have a plan. I have this big flowchart and I plan everything out. When, if you spend more time doing that than focusing on your current story, you'll wind up with big parts of nothing like Time of the Doctor all over the place. And it's happening again. I've honestly got no idea how Season 8 was called Moffat building on his mistakes that he's made before, because as far as I could see, it was the exact same thing he's been doing for nearly half a decade now. We introduce a new companion, do the whole Doctor sets companions course from childhood thing again, just like with Amy, and yet for some reason this time, to change things up, he shoves him off screen for pretty much the entire series, going, we might do something with him later, and then he just kills him off at the end of it. Also, there was the stapling bits of Missy onto random episodes, just like with the Cracks in Time, going, ooh, it's a mystery. Oh, turns out she's the Master. Ooh, mystery. And also there was the dipping back into his we'll do that bit later Word document that he's been dropping his unanswered questions into since Season 5 and bringing out random bits that most of us forgot about, like the opening of Bells of St. John being brought back into Death in Heaven, which I'm fairly sure meant approximately nothing to most people. He just expends so much more effort in setting up what his next story might be than telling his current one. If every year all we get is a setup for the next one, too right am I going to get bored and go, oh, for God's sake, can you not just tell your current story? Many of us had the exact same problem with Lost. Like, straw poll here. How many people were actually satisfied with Lost's ending? Well, whatever the number is, it's totally disproportionate to the amount of people going, right, after all that time milling about in our characters' pasts and 80 million loose ends everywhere, that's it. I watched well over 100 hours of television, and that's it. That is what mystery box storytelling does if you draw as much attention to it as Moff and the Lost writers did, because it just doesn't feel natural. It makes it become alarmingly self-aware that this is a television show. We are holding pieces of information from you purely to keep you watching, with no promise of a satisfying resolution. Just more questions every year. Don't treat us like we're a Ming vase that you'll probably end up smashing sooner or later, so let's just draw out the process of eventually smashing it, because we will get bored of you doing that eventually, and it just intensifies the backlash in the long run. Why not just go ahead and tell your story now? I know that you're worried about when we start bitching, but reality check. Doctor Who fans will always find something to bitch about. That's just what we're like. It's inevitable. Stop wimping out on telling a current story, because it will just accelerate creative burnout if you focus so much on trying to ensure that no one can complain about what's right in front of their faces, and just putting off writing your conclusion and saying that you'll tie all your loose ends together at last minute because you're worried about what people will say. That's why I think he keeps doing this, because he's too concerned with people pointing out the flaws in what's right in front of their faces, so he's trying to make it look like we don't have a point. Like, no, I'm not calling for Moffat to have the series confiscated from him. I'm just heavily sceptical of Team Moffat coming out with much that more than mildly holds my interest, because they keep playing it far too safe every year. Aside from Season 5 being the bold new change that it was, it still feels like we're stuck in a rut and going in circles. But that's not fair, Stuart. He has been taking some risks. Well, yeah, some, but they're all the surface level details. None of them are in the storytelling department or creative perspective. Essentially, he's been getting the same people to write basically the same episodes every year or two. For example, if Mark Gatiss comes back again this year, I guarantee you that his episode will follow one of either two archetypes that he sticks to every single year. And how am I supposed to get excited for that when I know precisely what's going to happen? If you just continue doing the same thing every year without adding anything to the equation or evolving what you're working with, well, yeah, that's why I've kind of ended up with this impression that Moffat's still too afraid to take risks on what he's working with, because making the Doctor old and the Master female now are details on the surface. The creative process underneath has remained largely the same, which is what's caused me to feel like we're going in circles. And again, with the amount of people that felt utterly let down by Death in Heaven, I'm not the only one now, and I just feel that this is the factor that more people need to be addressing. My big question over why people bought into the barrage of hype and press releases about Season 8 being this total reinvention and the biggest change since 2005, and Moffat is back on track now, is how can Moffat shake himself up on his own with the exact same people that he's been working with on and off for nearly 5 years? How do you grow artistically by refusing to put a foot out of your comfort zone? Like, don't get me wrong with all my bitching. I don't hate Gatiss or Thompson or Moffat's recent work, surprise, surprise. All I'm saying is, I've seen what Moffat and his friends have to offer by this point. If you just keep on doing the same names every year, there's only so much you can get out of a situation like that. I want to see the show take more chances on more newer names more often, like with Jamie Matheson, who was easily the best thing to happen to Doctor Who in years. For those 2 weeks, the show felt reinvigorated and full of life to me. I want to see more stuff like that. He leapt at that opportunity with much more enthusiasm than I've seen in recent years. Like, on a kind of positive note, yes, I do like Capaldi as the Doctor, and Season 9's writing lineup is currently full of names that I do have positive feelings towards, even if they are all returning ones. Toby Whithouse is usually pretty fun, Catherine Tregenna is responsible for lots of early Torchwood's better episodes, particularly Meat, which I absolutely loved, and Matheson speaks for himself, but because nothing seems to be changing, again, this era still doesn't feel as fresh and exciting to me as it should. I predict that this year and the next, my reaction aside from the occasional anomaly is going to be variations on the phrase, it's alright, wasn't it? Because, as said, no, I don't hate the way the show's going, I just wish I was more excited about it. Maybe I am jealous in that regard. I don't know if anyone noticed, but last season, I only made 2 wildly negative reviews. Yeah, go back and check, I was nowhere near as harsh on any of the others. I even gave the highly slated In the Forest of the Night the time of day in the end. I was mostly just apathetic towards most of it, which does not equal hate. Meanwhile, Moffat's going to continue telling us that it's a new era and that things are evolving and growing, and all power to you if you're on board with the way that it's going, but I'm just not feeling it. I still feel like we're going in circles and being set up for letdowns everywhere because Moffat spends so much more time telling me that I should be impressed than actually impressing me. I just can't help feeling unenthusiastic. Anything decent that we've been getting out of it appears to be a convenient accident because Moffat over-future-proofs the shit out of everything because he's terrified of backlash while perpetuating the myth that maybe they're saving it for later justifies the here and now being underwhelming and full of plot holes. And for some reason people seem to assert that when you say that you're unenthusiastic about Doctor Who in its current state that that's your fault, and hell, maybe it is partly me being a jaded, bitter curmudgeon, but as far as I can see, Moffat set himself in his ways far too long ago to be able to offer anything that feels fresh and exciting by this point if he's just going to continue resolutely changing nothing while thinking that just telling us that he is will make a difference. And if you told me that I would end up feeling this way about it in 2010, it would make me sad to hear it. Just know that much. Just, Moffat, if you're watching, shut up, it could happen. I know that the intense hate mob that you've got on the internet seems overbearing and I've sort of begrudgingly been lumped into it out of tired frustration by this point, but just know that I don't bear you any ill will. Your early work really had an effect on me, and I'll always be interested in where your career goes after Doctor Who, at which point, if you're not planning a long, well-earned break when you leave, I'm going to seriously recommend it because it's just come to feel like you're running on empty. But just know that there are lots of people like me blurred into that sole voice of dissent. Just know that lots of us don't want to have ended up here. As said, I will follow your career after you've left Doctor Who. I'm interested to see what you do next, but for the time being, I just haven't got a whole lot of optimism left for what the show's doing with its current managerial setup. People are quick to chant Moffat out, but I want to give you more respect than that, because I know that you can be a great writer. I've seen you write awesome stuff. If you're struggling to meet your deadlines and are having serious trouble thinking outside the box, perhaps we could get a co-head writer? Someone for you to collaborate with regularly? How about Jamie Matheson? He'd be a good idea for you to share head writing duties with. The guy's full of enthusiasm. And perhaps we could have an exec producer who's totally uninvolved with the writing process to perhaps suggest the creative direction and raise any script issues at production stage. I feel that someone on board needs to know when to say no. Lines need to be drawn, and we need to remind everybody that always yes men do much more harm than good in the long run. Just stop me if I'm talking out my arse here, but it's been feeling like a one-man show for far too long, and everyone has their creative limits, supposed genius or not. Too many cooks spoil the broth, yes, but 2 heads are better than 1 and 4 are better than 2. And just the amount of attention and responsibility that the showrunner gets feels like it's been counterproductive. I just feel that you've been running Doctor Who in a volatile way. And I'm not saying that giving one man so much control over a project is always the wrong thing to do. I just feel that having it primarily curated by one man was the wrong idea because of Doctor Who's anywhere, anywhen format. It needs other perspectives. Looking at what you've been doing lately, I just feel that we need more people to bring more creativity to the table and, most importantly, to refine that creativity. In short, Doctor Who needs a government of equals, not a monarch. There is a very, very good reason that most long-running US drama series are written in teams. So, this video has been very long and depressing, I know. You're probably going to need a long lie down to take your mind off lots of the shite that I've just slogged through, so I'll save you the trouble. Here's a video of some bunny rabbits to cheer you up.
Happiness, happiness, the greatest gift that I possess. I thank the Lord that I've been blessed with more than my share of happiness. To me this world is a wonderful place. I'm the luckiest human in the human race. I've got no silver and I've got no gold, but I've got happiness in my soul.